Hey friends, welcome back to another radar video. I fear the lighting is washing me out, which is a shocker because it's a very gloomy day. But we will persevere. Hi, if you're new around here, I'm Hannah. We talk about books, chronic illness, knitting, life in Amsterdam. I'm back with one of my radar videos, which is where I share upcoming new releases that are of interest to me and hopefully to you too. Literary fiction, translated fiction, memoir, political non-fiction, all the good stuff. I'm hoping to get ahead and film this and get it out to you at a reasonable time in April. But we'll see. I have quite a lot of non-fiction to talk to you about today, which is exciting because I get a lot of messages from people saying they find it hard to find non-fiction that interests them, and I feel like it's not publicised and we don't get as many newspaper reviews of non-fiction that's interesting. So yeah, I'm keen to share those, but we will start as always with some novels. Up first, I have The House of Mirrors by Erin Kelly. This is described as a creepy gothic story for our times. This doesn't sound totally like my kind of book, but something about in the blurb really intrigued me. It says, in the sweltering summer of 1997, straight-laced, straight-A student Karen meets Bieber, a bohemian and impossibly glamorous aspiring actress. A few months later, 2 people are dead and another's been sent to prison. Having stood by Rex as he served his sentence, Karen is now married to him with a daughter, Alice, who runs a vintage clothing store in London. They're a normal family as long as they don't talk about the past, never mention the name Bieber, and ignore Alice's flashes of dark, dangerous fury. Karen has kept what really happened in the summer of 97 hidden inside, and Alice is keeping secrets of her own. But when anonymous notes begin arriving at the shop, the past is about to catch up on them all. It's described as a white-knuckle ride through a murky past creeping up on the present. This sounds like a super fun book club kind of book. If you guys have been around here for a while, you know I do holiday book clubs with my mum and my partner and friends who join our holidays. This is definitely one that I'm considering for our annual French holiday where we have friends join. That's like more people. I need to appeal to more people in my book choice. It's a dictatorship, not democracy. I choose all the books, but this one definitely sounds like it could be of interest to us. Then I've got Fun and Games by John Patrick McHugh. This is published on the 24th by Fourth Estate. This is described as a teenage boy coming of age on the west coast of Ireland. 17-year-old John Masterson has no idea what he wants. It's his last summer on the small island where he's grown up, and he should be enjoying the weeks until his exam results come through. Instead, he's working mind-numbing shifts at the local hotel, keeping his head down as his mum's nude sex to another man was leaked. Whoa, this took a turn. Was leaked to the whole island. John joins the local football team and gets caught up in fights and parties and embarks on a tentative relationship with his older co-worker Amber that he feels proud and ashamed of. He can pretend this summer will last forever, but soon he's facing up to the choice in front of him: stay or leave, stand out or fit in, let yourself love and be loved, or despite or perhaps of the flaws that make us all human. A darkly comic debut novel. This sounds really interesting to me. I love a coming of age story. I love a story set on an island. I love Ireland. Lots of ticks here for me. One of my friends reviewed this and said it was brilliant, so it's got high praise indeed. We have a new novel from Sean Hewitt. He's a poet and a memoirist. This is Open Heaven. I will say I did start reading this book, but I was having pretty bad mental health time at the time, so I never finished it. My partner did finish it and absolutely loved it. It's definitely got that Ocean Vuong poets to a prose kind of quality to it that I've heard is beautiful. This is published on the 24th of April as well by Vintage. On the cusp of adulthood, James dreams of another life far away from his small village as he contends with the expectations of his family and his burgeoning desire innate for autonomy, tenderness and sex. His shy exterior threatens to unravel. He meets Luke, unkempt and handsome, charismatic and impulsive, who's sent to live with his aunt and uncle on a nearby farm, coming with a reputation of danger, but underneath his bravado lies anxieties and hopes of his own. With the passing seasons, these teenagers grow close and a bond emerges that transforms their life. James falls deeply for Luke, and yet he's never sure of Luke's true feelings. As the summer ends, he has a choice to make. Will he risk all for the possibility of love? So this is a beautiful queer love story. I really liked the passages that I did read, and I want to come back to it. And I love a book set across a season, especially reading it in season. So that is Open Heaven. We have 7 Days in Tokyo by Jose Daniel Alvaro. This is published by Unbound, who are going bust or going under, I think. So I'm not sure what's happening. I know there's some chatter about what's happening with the publication of the authors under that press, because a lot of it is crowdfunded and yeah, I think it's a bit complicated. So hopefully this book makes it out, if not by this publisher, by another. It says 2 strangers meet in Manhattan and spend a perfect night together. In Tokyo, they have 7 days to see if the one night might mean more. Landon's living alone in Tokyo as a British expat, and Louis visiting while he anxiously awaits approval for his US visa. Against the backdrop of misty Tokyo spring, their precious time together is spent wandering the side streets and coffee shops, sharing unmade beds and plates of food. But all as the days tick by, Louis' expectation starts to take over from reality, and he feels deeply for a life that's really not yet his. Breathtakingly tender and an astonishing debut about the intricacies of desire and belonging, lyrical and immersive. The premise of this reminded me a little bit of a novel, 7 Days in June, which is one of my favourite more traditional romance novels that follows this structure of like 2 strangers who meet and have that love at first sight feeling and then reconnect later, and they like a really short, tight time span. So this does sound like it could be really beautiful. Okay, one that's a little different from my personal taste, but I think that might be, I don't know, something about it intrigued me. So this is also published by Unbound. It says Unbound / Neem Tree Press. Neem Tree Press are a lovely small press in the UK, but I'm not sure who's publishing this one. But it should be out on the 17th of April. And it describes a contemporary murder mystery with an estranged mother and daughter reconnecting and navigating the world of Sufi story traditions to catch a killer and save each other. So I'm not sure how much of this story is magical realism or playing with folklore or stories of ancient history, but nonetheless it sounds fascinating. This says Layla is a scholar of women's histories and stories. Her life is carefully constructed with a set of routines around her small American liberal arts college, but all of that is about to change. Mira is a renowned Sufi storyteller who's running from a terrible past. When she learns that a murdered woman in the library is carrying a note from the killer addressed to her, she's presented with an opportunity to break a cycle of hurt. To confront her past, she must disclose the truth to Layla. Together they enter the realm of the story. So that's the bit where I'm not sure what that entails, and the cover I guess seems quite mystical, but can Layla find forgiveness in her heart to lead them to the answers they're looking for? So it's from the descriptions of other people quoting it says that it uses Sufi thought and Sufi philosophy, which I don't know very much about, but I have listened to Sufi poetry before and went to like a wonderful performance of it. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how this could be entangled into a novel. Okay, then I have a book translated from the Norwegian, which is very fitting, so I'm going to Norway soon. This is Back in the Day, published by Penguin. And it's about young men. I think it might be quite violent, but about young boys and toxic masculinity and hegemonic masculinities in the context of Norway. I think the author was... I read something about the author is Croatian but grew up in Norway, and this is translated from the Norwegian. It says, Ivan and Marco have been getting high since they were 13, dealing at 14 and by 15 carrying knives. At 16, they hurtle from one trip to the next, one fight to the next, and watching their back. Ivan dreams of getting out, finishing school, becoming a lawyer, marrying the girl he loves from the corner shop. But the path he's on really only leads one way. In flashes of firecracker pose shot with rare empathy, irrepressible wit, and gut-punched pathos, Oliver Lorenzsky gives voice to young men growing up in a brutal and chaotic world. This sounds like it might have hankerings of Who They Was by Gabrielle Krause, which is one of my favourite books I've read about young male violence and gang culture in big cities. The author, Gabrielle Krause, it's a like semi-autobiographical auto-fiction piece that I really loved, and this sounds like it could be brilliant, if not brutal to read. Sayaka Murata has a new book coming out. She wrote Convenience Store Woman and Earth Things, and what was her short story collection called? My favourite still remains Convenience Store Woman. This is a futuristic dystopian story around desire. It says, in a near future world, children are solely conceived by artificial insemination. Even sex between married couples is viewed as taboo. And Amane's family is irregular. Her parents copulated to create her and hope that she too will find love and have a child with the person she marries, but she falls in line with society's thinking and wants a regular, clean marriage. Then she hears of a place that's the subject of a social experiment. Everyone in Paradise Eden is one big family. Could this be the perfect third way? This concept and setup sounds really fascinating to me. Very strange, which is kind of what Murata does really well, but yeah, I think with those zingy hints and funny, witty lines, along with this dystopian storyline, could be really good. Then I have City of Fiction by Yuha. This is published on the 24th by Europa. This is set in 20th century China. It says China is a land undergoing a momentous and social cultural shift, with a 1,000-year empire crumbling and the nation on the brink of modernity. Against this backdrop, a quiet man from the north embarks on a perilous journey to a southern city in the grip of a savage snowstorm. He carries a newborn baby. He is looking for a child's mother and a city that isn't there. This is a story of two people, a man who finds unexpected success after journeying to the hometown of a woman who abandoned him, and the woman he's searching for who mysteriously disappeared to embark on her own events. This is a story about vanished crafts and ancient customs, about violence, love and friendship, and overall a story about change and storytelling itself, with vivid and surprising characters, an epic tale as gripping as a classic adventure story. I'm partial to an adventure story now and again, if they have good sort of momentum with them, and this one sounds like it might, and I think the cover is impeccably striking for this one. A book I've seen a lot of buzz about that's sort of like millennial fiction that people are talking about is All the Other Mothers Hate Me by Sarah Harmon. I'm less inclined to read these kinds of books these days. I think I have lost a bit of patience for them after their come up in the pandemic, and I feel like I personally read a lot of them back then. But on the right day, I can be partial to one if I need something easy that switches my brain off. This says, Florence knows all about failure after the dismal end to her 2000s girl band career. She's moping around West London, single, broken, unfulfilled, and the only thing she's proud of is her elaborate nail art choices and her 10-year-old son, Dylan. But when Alfie Risby, Dylan's bitter class rival and a child heir to a frozen food empire, mysteriously vanishes on a school trip, Dylan is the prime suspect, so Florence has to get her act together, find the missing boy and clear her son's name or risk losing him forever. The only problem is she doesn't have any detective skills, nor is she popular at the school gates, and she's just found Alfie's backpack hidden under Dylan's bed. Okay, colour me intrigued a little. This doesn't sound so typical millennial, and I think we are entering the era of more sort of like relatable motherhood fiction, which again is something I cringe a little at. It's the same as like the relatable divorce fiction, that's packaged in a very similar way in publishing. I think they all have these covers, and it's like the next iteration of the millennial fiction, I guess, because millennials are aging upwards and many are having children. So I think it's an interesting trend, but yeah, I would be intrigued to hear people's reviews of that. Another book, I think this is short stories, called Atavis by Lydia Millett. I think Lydia Millett wrote A Children's Bible, which is a very popular book at the time, which I didn't end up reading. But this is a collection of short stories that are linked together in the joy and alienation between generations and classes. I saw this reviewed recently talking about it as sort of like what liberals get wrong kind of storytelling. It says the various ists who people these linked stories, from futurists to insurrectionists to cosmetologists, include a professor who's morbidly fixated on an old friend's Instagram account, a woman convinced her young bright son-in-law is watching geriatric porn, a bodybuilder who lives in an incel fantasy life, and a couple who surveil the neighbours after finding obscene notes in their mailbox, a pretentious academic accused of plagiarism, and a suburban ex-marathoner dad obsessed with hosting refugees in his tiny home in the backyard. That sounds quite funny. This is about collisions, confessions, and conflicts in a don't love the use of a post-pandemic America, considering we have still a pandemic of multiple proportions now, in artificially lush lawns, beauty salons, and tech bro mansions, college campuses, and medieval role-playing festivals. Sounds like if it hits the right tone, this could be incredibly funny. Okay, another novel I have for you is The Homemade God by Rachel Joyce, publishing with Random House on the 17th. This is family is everything and when it falls apart, until when it falls apart. This is sort of, I think, a pretty typical family saga, which I really enjoy, particularly on a holiday to read. This says there's a heatwave across Europe, and Goose and his three sisters gather at the family's house in Lake Orta, Italy. Their father, a famous artist, has recently remarried a younger woman and decamps to Italy to finish his masterpiece. Now he's dead and there's no sign of a painting. Although the siblings have always been close, they search for an answer over that summer. The things they learn about themselves, their father, and their new stepmother will drive them apart before they can come to an understanding of their father's true legacy. This sounds a bit like The Unwilding by Marina Kemp, which is a book I really loved that definitely had a troubled father artist at its core. And pieces of it also sound like The Alternatives by Carolyn Hughes, which doesn't have a troubled dad, but does have a lot of other complicated sibling dynamics. And you know what? I'm a sucker for them, because what is life except for family dysfunction? One I'm so keen to buy, which I think I will be desperately picking up because this just sounds so good to me, is Idle Grounds by Crystal Bamford, published by Cornerstone. Also, 17th of April is a big day. Is that because it's the last day before the Easter bank holiday? I'm not sure. Anyway, it says, on a bright summer day in 1989 New England, Abby, 3 years old, vanishes from her aunt's secluded home. Upstairs, her young cousins are looking out of their window, and something is unfolding at the distance at the edge of the forest, something sinister that's watching them back. The adults don't seem to notice that the youngest of the group has disappeared, too busy bickering over politics and reminiscing about the family's late matriarch, Beezy. They leave the children with no choice but to get Abby back themselves. As the cousins embark on a quest through their grandmother's sprawling estate, buried secrets come to life and long-awaited plans are set in motion, and will they lose themselves after trying to find her? A chilling, evocative, and darkly comic story about childhood legacy, burdens, and privilege. People said this has a culty element to it. I'm not sure what that is. Perhaps whatever's looking in the forest at them. But something about this sounds intriguing. I love the colour of the cover and the idea of this matriarch non-character sort of coming over the storyline, although she is no longer alive, playing a big role. I don't know. Something about it just tickled my pickle, as we say. Then I have Fishtails by Nettie Jones. Iconic cover. This is published by FSG on the 15th, my birthday. This says, Lewis Jones is a party girl for the ages. Confident and cavalier, she seeks freedom and a good time, leaving mayhem in her wake. Strutting between the bohemian demi-mode of New York City and the affluent black community of Detroit, she's supported in her adventures by her husband Woody and accompanied by her friend Kitty Cat, a gay hustler with impeccable style and a knack for finding all the best spots. She guzzles champagne, snorts cocaine, wakes up on silk sheets, and has a variety of lovers. And then she is upended by the handsome, erudite, often cruel Brooke, a man who has his own bevy of admirers. Soon, Lewis and Brooke are ensnared in a struggle for dominance that launches into a shock of violence. Fishtails offers a glittering and devastating portrait of a woman's pursuit of her own kind of freedom, a striking deluge of longing, anxiety, ego, and identity. As provocative as it is moving and as profound as it is artful. Really interested to read about the era that this is set in, and having 1970s New York, Detroit, the sort of like affluent black community. I think this just sounds like it could be a real interesting take. This was published originally in 1984 and it's being republished now. It said it was originally acquired by Toni Morrison at the time, which is, you know, wide praise indeed. I have The Carnival of Atrocities by Natalia Garcia Ferrer. This is published on the 1st of April by World Editions. This is set in Ecuador, which I think is fascinating. It says, the residents of a desolate town nestled in the Ecuadorian Andes are forced to reckon with the legend of Mildred, a girl who wronged the town. This town is nestled between the hot jungle and the frigid Andes, about to slip away from memory. This is where Mildred was born and where everything she had, her animals, her home, and her land, was taken from her after her mother's death. Years later, a series of strange events, disappearances, and outbursts of collective delirium will force its residents to reckon with the legend of old Mildred. Once again, they will feel the shadow of death that's hung over every town ever since she had wronged. The voice of 9 different characters tell us of the past and the present of the doomed place of Mildred's fate. Vivid language blurs the line between dreams and reality. Oh, that's always a red flag for me, guys. I really don't like reading about dreams. I don't know how you feel about it, but just a pet peeve of mine. No offense to anyone who writes a lot of dream sequences. It transports the reader to a hypnotic Andean universe of Ecuador. Love the sound of the setting. This kind of is giving me, not Paradise, but what was her first novel? Me looking, where's my Fitzcarraldo collection? Oh goodness, brain fog. I can't remember, but the book about the witch, one of you is going to tell me, I know. Published by Fitzcarraldo, Mexican writer. That haunting of a place by someone who's passed, who's been wronged, that sort of fable mythic element, I think could be really, really interesting. Okay, we're on to non-fiction. I told you I've got a lot because we're like halfway. This is Dosa, a memoir of a not-so-perfect Asian girl by Hai Seung Song. This is published on the 24th. This sounds so interesting to me. It says, from the Texas sugarcane fields, Ivy League halls to a homeland of South Korea and back again. This is a memoir of a journey of identity crisis, mental health struggles, and the quest for selfhood. Born to Korean immigrant parents, she spent her early years in the sugar canes of Texas, caught between her father's get-rich-quick scheme and her beautiful, domineering mother who's skeptical of Western idealism. With her parents constantly at odds, Haesung learns more Korean words for hatred than love, and when her family's fake Gucci business lands them in bankruptcy, she starts a new school where she's singled out with that question: do you even speak English? Growing up, she internalizes Western expectations of the model Asian American, striving for approval and getting into an Ivy League school, but resents the other high-achieving Asians she meets and clings to the token status amongst her white peers. When she reconciles her identity through a trip to Korea, facing an even greater crisis of self after a shocking series of events, she's admitted to a psychiatric hospital and ultimately attempts her suicide. Marriage to a doting white physicist and a new career as a painter offers refuge until it doesn't. This sounds so good. Like, this person has lived so many lives. It's reminding me of Catherine Chu's book about Inferno, about motherhood. And then this also is talking about sort of like model minority and the American dream, fascinated by the family Gucci fake business. Just so much in here I think could be brilliant. Okay, a more academic-facing non-fiction book that also sounds really great is All This Safety Is Killing Us, Health Justice Beyond Prisons, Police and Borders. This is an abolitionist guide or manifesto about carceral safety systems, essentially. So it says prisons, border security and police forces are meant to protect, but for the most vulnerable they cause harm. Funded in response to a never-ending crime wave, people with disabilities, black and brown people, trans and queer people with mental health diagnosis and survivors of trauma are targeted by punitive carceral policies that perpetuate physical, psychological and intergenerational harm. They don't keep anyone safe. So this has contributions by scholars, activists and artists using nurses, doctors, doulas, community activists, queer, transgender, expansive writers, prisoners, deportees, survivors of state-sanctioned violence, and interviews with health justice scholars. So sounds like a brilliantly important book, bringing a lot of research and scholarly evidence and conversation to a public domain, which we all love to know. We're all trying to learn here, especially in the world we're living in right now. Then Andrea Long Chu has, I think this is her first collection of essays. She is a prolific book critic. Her essays most often go viral for her striking and sort of like unwavering opinions on certain books and people. This is her essays Authority. So since her I never know how you say that, canonic, I'm not even going to try. She had an essay that is now considered canon, I suppose, in literary criticism, called On Liking Women. The Pulitzer Prize-winning critic Andrea Long Chu has established herself as a public intellectual, devastating wit and polemic clarity. She defies the imperative to leave politics out of art and models how the left might brave the culture wars without throwing into the cynics and doomsayers. This brings together critical work across a range of media, novels, television, theatre, video games, as well as I think so. It's also collaborating with essays that she's written previously. I always find that a bit of I don't know, just a bit of a money grab when the essays you can read through other subscriptions. Not all of them, I don't think. She says she charges fellow critics like Maggie Nelson and Zadie Smith with complacent humanism. And she's looking at the enduring habit of reading Octavia Butler's science fiction as a parable of slavery. Criticism today is having a crisis of authority, but so says every generation of critics. In 2 magisterial new essays, Chu offers a revised intellectual history of a perennial crisis, tracing the surprisingly political contours of criticism from its origins in Enlightenment to its present day of social media. So I think it's like bookended with these new essays about authority and criticism, but then the middle bit I think is currently published essays. Not sure. If you've seen this book in person and can tell me, I would love to know. Okay, a book out by Frances Ryan I'm so excited to talk about. I really want to make a video soon about all the books from disabled writers that are coming out this year, because there's so much brilliant, especially non-fiction coming out. This is Who Wants Normal, the Disabled Girl's Guide to Life. Frances Ryan is one of the most prolific disabled journalists we have in the UK. She's written quite a long-standing column in The Guardian. She's a huge critic of sort of governmental policy around disability and is super intersectional with her views, and I really appreciate it and her work. This is a manifesto, and she interviews a lot of different people to create this create this story about asking people questions about this idea of normalcy. So it says she draws on her own experience as well as personal interviews with the best known women and non-binary people with physical and mental health conditions. I hate the way that the Penguin website has written that. Including Jamia Jamil, who I love, Sophie Morgan, Rosie Jones, Katie Piper, lots of different people, MPs, writers, activists, artists. It says offering support and a sense of solidarity to the 1 in 4 women with long-term health conditions. So what's not to love about that? Okay, a book that's I think is only out in the States right now, but sounds fascinating to me. You guys know I love a white collar crime. I love a deep dive investigative journalist kind of spin on a book. Patrick Radden Keefe is my king. This sounds like it could be so good. It's called No More Tears, The Dark Secrets of Johnson & Johnson. Iconic cover. I'm sure the legal team at the publishing house were concerned about it, but looks great. One day in 2004, Gardner Harris, a pharmaceutical reporter for the New York Times, was on early to a flight and sat down at an airport bar. He struck up a conversation with the woman next to him, who happens to be the drug sales rep for Johnson & Johnson. Her horrific story about unethical sales practices and devastating impact they've had on her family fundamentally changed the nature of how Harris would cover the company and the entire pharmaceutical industry for the Times going forward. His subsequent investigation and ongoing research since that first conversation has led to this book, a blistering expose on the trusted institution and the largest healthcare conglomerate in the world. Lifting the lid on the child-friendly baby company, looking at evidence of the decades of deceitful and dangerous corporate practices. He covers multiple disasters, the links to the baby powder to cancer, the danger of Tylenol, the criminal campaign to sell antipsychotics that have cost multiple lives, a popular drug used to support cancer patients that actually increases the risk of cancer growth, and deceptive marketing, accelerating the opioid crisis through fentanyl, through their product, which has fentanyl in it that rivals even the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma. Whoa, that's crazy. Yeah, just sounds like a brilliant, essential piece of journalism, taking down big pharma, particularly in the American context, which is more vital than ever right now. Need I say more? Okay, more of a personal book that I actually have a copy of. The publisher sent me back at my mum's house. I need to go and pick up. This is Red Pockets by Alice Marr, published by Alan Lane. I don't know when. I think it might be out now. This says, every spring during the Qingyong Festival, people return to their home villages in China to sweep the tombs of their ancestors, making offerings of food and incense to prevent them from becoming hungry ghosts that could cause misfortune. Yet for the past century, a time ruptured by war and revolution, many tombs have been left unattended. Following a record year of wildfires, Alice returns to her family's rice village in South China and discovers her ancestors almost forgotten, there are no tombs left to sweep. Instead, there are incalculable clan debts to be paid. She chronicles her journey from the rice villages of South China to her home in post-industrial England, to the Chinatowns of Western Canada where she grew up, the Isles and industry of Scotland where she now lives. As time passes and fires rage, she becomes increasingly troubled by her ancestors' neglected graves, and her research on pollution gives way to eco-anxiety and a crisis of spiritual belief. A blend of memoir, cultural history, and environmental exploration. I love a intersectional, multi-themed non-fiction book where the author really inserts themselves, but collaborates with evidence, with political conversation, with socio-economic context. I really love a non-fiction book that does all of that. I don't want a memoir that just tells someone's stories of their life. I want to know what you're thinking about when you're writing this, and this sounds like it's going to do that, so I'm so excited to read this. Okay, another one of those investigative journalists, more serious stories. This is Secrets of the Killing State, The Untold Story of the Lethal Injection by Karina Barrett Lane, published by New York University Press. The title kind of says, this is pulls back the curtain on the clandestine punishment practice, presenting a view of lethal injection that states have worked hard to hide. Bots executions are part of this story, but just the tip of the iceberg. Suffering that we don't see. Indeed, the story here is bigger than the executions. From the behind the scene where it unfolds, fake science, torturous drugs, inept executioners, prison problems of decades of state secrecy has created an execution method hardwired to go wrong in countless ways. This sounds absolutely just horrific to read about. I've always felt so strongly and viscerally about the death penalty and lethal injections, and utterly disturbed by the whole system of it, particularly in the US. So I think this would be a very hard book to read, but probably brilliant. Okay, coming up to the end now, we have a British book on Black British culture. This is We Were There, How Black Culture, Resistance and Community Shaped Modern Britain. Published on by Penguin. I'm sorry, I can't tell you when it was published because the website's not loading. On the 17th. This says it's from the late 1970s to the early 1990s. Britain was in tumult, rocked by Margaret Thatcher's radical economic policy, the rise of the National Front, widespread unrest with anti-immigration policies, and in the political mainstream. Don't those things all sound familiar in the year of our Lord 2025? Black lives were on the front line of a radical reckoning, but it was also at the time of unrivaled Black cultural creation, organising and resistance. This is the crucible in which modern Britain came to exist. Here We Were There brings into the spotlight for the first time extraordinary Black lives in once rich cities, now home to failing industries, the foundries of Birmingham, the docks of Liverpool and Cardiff, and the mills of Bradford. We are in Wigan, Wolverhampton, Manchester, and the green expanse of the British countryside. We meet feminists, Rastafarians, and academics, rugby league superstars, witness landmark campaigns, and encounter radical artists and thinkers that hosted Northern Soul all-nighters and the birth of Acid House. London was only ever part of the picture, and this is incorporating Black Britons into the fabric of our national story. Doesn't that sound amazing? I'm definitely buying this for my boyfriend for his birthday. I think he will enjoy this so much, and it's so true. All the books we read so often, recent historical books, center on London or Manchester, and that's about it. And I think it's so important to encapsulate our whole country into the fabric of the national story, like it says, and particularly when it comes to cultural movements, including Black British people, which are so vital and, you know, the building blocks of so much of the culture that we enjoy today. So I think this sounds amazing. Okay, the last one for a medical scandal. We've had a lot in this video. This is The Sleep Room by John Stock, a very British medical scandal. If you read The Premonitions Bureau by Sam Knight, one of my favourite non-fiction books of all time, you should go and read it. I need to make a video on my favourite non-fiction, actually. Haven't been a while. This doctor is mentioned in that book, and I love when that happens, serendipity. This says, the Royal Waterloo Hospital in the 1960s, 6 young women fall asleep on low beds. Day and night no longer exist, extinguished by a potent cocktail of antipsychotics, sedative and antidepressant drugs. These women are taken from their beds by nurses and given electroconvulsive therapy before being put back to bed again, all under the predatory eye of Dr. William Sargent, which is the name you will be familiar with if you read that book. A chilling expose on Sargent's bizarre psychiatric treatment, as well as the hundreds of women with mental illness, among them the actor Celia Imrie. At the story centre is a sinister and charismatic doctor who was a hugely influential figure in post-war British society, lauded by Robert Graves and Aldous Huxley, as well as regularly appearing on the BBC. When Sargent died in 1988, the obituaries were only glowing. But since then, women treated without their consent and with horrific side effects lasting decades of campaign to tell the truth about Sargent. Author John Stock tells these women's stories, as well as delving into the murky history of Sargent's links to the CIA and MI5, both of which took a close interest in his views to reprogram the human mind. Doesn't that sound utterly disturbing but fascinating? That one is definitely a contender for our annual road trip audiobook that me and my boyfriend do when we drive down to France for 2 days every year. This is definitely one I can see us enjoying. At 432 pages, I know the audiobook will be long, which is perfect for us. Let me know if you're interested in reading The Sleep Room. And with that, those are all the books I have to talk to you about. I feel like I spoke extra fast in this episode, trying to fit them all in. Yes, tell me which ones are on your radar, which you've read already, or which ones you're seeking out. I feel like there's some bangers in the non-fiction world coming out this spring, and I'm really excited to get to them. Although my reading has been slow this year, I'm hoping when the sun comes out, it will pick up too. That's all I have for you this episode, and I will get back to you soon with more bookish content. Bye for now.